Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to another installment of viewer submitted invasions. I do apologize, I'm a little under the weather, so my throat hurts just a little bit, and I hope that doesn't come through too much in the recording. Our first submission is from Jacob. I'll leave a link to Jacob's channel in the description below. He's got a pretty cool channel. He's got a video in particular on parry baits with crossbows that I thought was pretty interesting, so you may want to give that a watch. His video here today, or his build rather, this is a straight up low level vigor gouge, level 36. Most of the stats dumped into vigor, strength and dex just to hit the weapon minimum requirements, raw infusions on everything. Definitely a fan of this overall approach, and I think it's the right way to build a low level twink. The only objection I have here is the partisan and the mace, keeping those both around for soft swapping definitely creates an encumbrance problem. Now, Jacob, you've worked around this problem by using Havel's Ring. First of all, if you're going to use Havel's Ring, I'd use Havel's +3, but I wouldn't use Havel's here. I would actually make the change to hard swap between the partisan and the mace. I like that approach because, first of all, it frees up a ring slot, and especially because if you're a devotee of the Untrue Dark Ring, you need the other ring slot. The other thing I like about it, and here you can see I set up a version of the build here where I got rid of Havel's Ring, and only now you have to hard swap from partisan to mace. I like that too because it forces you to think outside just those two weapons rather than swapping only between those two. Whenever you have to hard swap, you bring up your inventory, and now you're confronted with the choice of all the weapons that you have, and so you can pick weapons that are better suited for any particular task. So obviously here we are, Cathedral of the Deep. Jacob's been invaded, most likely by a twink. Twink's using the crossbow and some form of dagger. It's kind of an interesting sort of build. Jacob's using the mace. I love the mace. I use it all the time. It is a great low-level raw weapon, one of the best. But I would probably not use it against somebody with a dagger. That dagger spam is real. It's too easy for somebody who knows their way around PvP to outspace you. Another thought is if you free up that ring with Havel's Ring, I would immediately fill it with the Estus Ring. Estus Ring, when you're at +3 on your Estus upgrades, is a huge improvement. A huge amount of Estus. I believe it's an extra 20%, and you'll really notice the difference. Our friend here is a bit of a parry spammer, and right there, just a bit of advice. Uncharged R2s are about the worst thing that you can do when somebody is trying to reaction parry you, because they're too slow to reaction parry the normal R1, but that R2 is like perfectly timed into their parry spam. But I do like you really make a good adjustment here. Your mix-up game is really good, and you do a really good job of maintaining aggression in the face of a parry spammer or a 50-50 player. 50-50 player being somebody that mixes between spamming their weapon and spamming parry, and especially with a dagger, that is very difficult to deal with. Of course, now he goes to the Dragon Slayer axe. So predictable. I gotta be honest, I really don't care for builds like this personally. I've used the Dragon Slayer axe myself. I know how good it is. That's just kind of a personal preference. Now, he's not using lightning bundles with it, and I'm not sure why, because with the lightning bundles, the damage on it is hella great, and that was a really nice backstab on his run-in. I really like that. So as this fight develops, I think I'm seeing something that I've seen frequently in other contexts. And there, when he persevered, that was clearly to heal. I would have probably tried to backstab him there. That's kind of a nitpicky thing, but something to keep in mind. But I think what's happening here, this happens to me sometimes. He came in as a twink. He had his little dagger and crossbow build. And then when he realized that you weren't going to be easy pickings, he's going to go all out with the Dragon Slayer axe. He's going to use all of his Estus. As we're going to see in a moment, he's going to start using siegbraus as well. Even though at this point, if he's got 7 plus 10 Estus, he has way more healing capability than you do. He's completely outmatching you in terms of like his build and what's available to him. And that's not a criticism of you, Jacob. That's just a fact of, the fact that he's been through the game already, and you have not. I personally find that pretty irritating. People can play the game however they choose, but I guess that's just how I feel about it. I would prefer to see people who twink like this. Certainly use those powers against the ganks, against over-leveled phantoms, but against a solo host, even if you're being outplayed, I don't think that that's a reason to resort to tactics like that. I would say here you should probably be trying to pressure him a little bit more. And the other thing that I would encourage you to do, again, I really like the partisan. I like the mix up. It's a fantastic weapon. It's got the unparryable weapon art, which doesn't use much FP, which makes it, again, really good at low levels. But I would consider adding either a straight sword or like a curved sword, like the Gru curved sword to your build. Because right now you can see he's just reaction rolling that mace. The partisan, it's harder to pressure. With a straight sword, you can really get in his face. You can unlock to avoid the parry spam, or the Gru curve sword will allow you to put a lot of pressure on him. And I think especially when dealing with parry spammers, getting pressure on them is paramount, because that's what knocks them off their game, and that's what really gets them to stop parry spamming so aggressively. One interesting thing is the evidence that your approach is working is the fact that he felt the need to mirror you with the four-pronged plow. He obviously felt like you were getting too big an advantage with the reach on your partisan. Obviously, the explosive bolts, which are really annoying to deal with at low level. You've got the shield, which helps mitigate that a little bit. I thought earlier he was using siegbraus there. Now I'm less certain that that's the case. He may have just been using Estus. I would actually have to go back and count how many he used, which I'm probably not going to do. But if anyone happens to notice and can leave a comment, that would be appreciated. He's putting some good pressure on you here. Again, the 50-50 game. And he's using the crossbow pretty well. Definitely a capable opponent. I noticed your pressure is kind of slacking here a little bit. I'm sure the four-pronged plow is part of the reason for that. He's doing a good job of spacing you out here. I really do like the approach of getting like a straight sword and just really getting in his face, or a curved sword. The Gru curved sword has poison too, which builds up, and that can be an extra source of pressure. Now he'll probably have plenty of moss. It's just something extra that he's going to have to think about. Plus, if you use bundles, at this point you should be able to use fire bundles. Fire bundles on any of these weapons would be definitely encouraged. It can almost double the damage output that you're putting out, especially if you're trying to compete with somebody like this. And right there, you did something interesting. You tried to put him in a roll catch chain. Generally speaking, like an experienced invader, they may fall for it once, but they're usually not going to keep falling for it over and over in a chain. So you want to kind of mix up the timing sometimes. That was a good use of the third R1. You hadn't done that the entire fight. Caught him in a panic roll. Very nicely done, Jacob. Nice fights. Okay, our next submission is from a player by the name of QY. This is Gael's greatsword build with offhand S-stock, obviously something that's near and dear to my heart. I really, really dig this build. The only thing I questioned about this build a little bit is the allocation of stats in strength and dexterity. I took the Souls Planner build. I was playing around with it a little bit, and what I found was dropping strength had pretty huge effects on Gael's AR, so I probably wouldn't touch that. But I was able to drop dex by a fair bit without huge impact on either Gael's or the S-stock. Now, there is definitely impact, and I'll show an alternate version of the build here where I drop dexterity by a considerable amount and increase the endurance. I noticed, QI, your build is a lot like my older builds used to be, where there's not much in the way of endurance. That's ultimately a personal preference, and it's largely a function of your play style. If you find that you play a bit more passively, especially like I used to, then you can get by with a lot less endurance. So one thing I'll have to watch here is, do you run out of endurance? Do you frequently find that you have to reset fights because you're out of stamina, because you cannot continue to pressure, or are you just kind of breaking off at sort of a natural point? Now, obviously, you're using grass. You're using the Chloranthy Ring +3. That helps a lot. It helps a lot to mitigate those problems. But, of course, it doesn't eliminate it entirely. So that would be my only sort of build counsel to you. And I'm not even suggesting that you should make that change, just that that's kind of like an alternate that you can consider. Gael's charged R2s are amazing. They do a ton of damage, and I know QI has the Leo ring on, which adds a lot of extra potential damage. Beautifully done. I like the switch to the one-handed move set when you had the blue low at health. Predicted the panic roll, punished it with the S stock. That was just an absolute textbook elimination of that blue. So here for me, this is kind of a judgment call, but the moment I see a Freeds user, I'm going to switch to something that lets me parry, just because they all use the weapon art. It's pretty easy to parry once you learn how. The key is that you can't parry the magical scythe, you can only parry the physical one. I would say when I confront a Freed user, and there you should have probably rotated your camera once the host got around you. I think that was like the one point of camera mismanagement I saw in this entire fight. But when a Freed user approaches, I would say probably 80% of the time I parry them. And I see here you're switching to the cestus, but I think not to parry, but to be able to initiate some aggression. This is a really tough situation to be in. Trying to initiate against a passive 2v1, especially when both of them have weapons that can absolutely melt you if you let them. There's no PvE to support. You're in an enclosed area. This is just one of the worst places to try to fight. And so you have to make a decision. Do you go deeper into the level with the knowledge that if you do, they probably won't follow, at least not for a while, which gives them an opportunity to bring in more blues, or they can retreat down the elevator and go and resummon. There's a lot of things that can go wrong with that approach. Plus, frankly, it's boring. And so I get wanting to fight them in here. And my approach is probably kind of a mix between forcing them to come fight me somewhere where I have a bit more of a tactical advantage, and just giving up and getting impatient and trying to like melt them right there. In the email that QY sent to me, and it actually, as soon as I saw that spell go up, that floating chaos, I would have immediately turned around and run away. I would not have tried to deal with the two people and floating chaos. But in the email that QY sent, I think she indicated that she was aware of the utility of a crossbow here, and it looks like the host is in his menu. I might have chanced a backstab there, and that was some interesting hitbox prawn right there. But I would have probably chanced a backstab. But in the email, QI mentioned she's aware of the utility of a crossbow in this situation, and for a variety of reasons, she didn't want to use it, and I get that, but I'm just mentioning it more because I'm sure somebody will bring it up, and it is a really great idea. Now, obviously, if they weren't in such an enclosed area, you could go with obscuring ring and great bow strats, but here with them enclosed, crossbow would be about the only way to actually to mess with them, and that was a nice redirect there of the R2. And one other problem for QI here is that the host is actually being pretty disciplined about his R1s. I've noticed he has not thrown out a second R1, I don't believe, a single time. Every time it's a single R1, which makes it harder to space him out. Going for things like roll backstabs, that would actually probably be my approach right here. I'd probably try to roll backstab his R1, but that is a little bit risky, and obviously depends on your comfort level too. So the Phantom is either out of Estus or is just being really reckless. I suspect he's actually out of Estus. I didn't set up this video maybe the best way. I know in the email QI mentioned that she had already dispatched a couple of Phantoms before the events in this video here. Nice spacing there, nice situational awareness to look out for the fume. Now that the Phantom's dead, Big Dick Billy is about to have a problem. I like the switch over to the Cestus here. I think that's a really good idea. You can mix up Perseverance. The running L1s are fantastic on this weapon. You can get backstabs, just a lot of general utility, the aggressive use of Perseverance, and of course the classic ending. Nice job, QY. Okay, that brings us to our very last clip. This is coming to us courtesy of, and I apologize, I don't know if this is Eddie or Edie, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce your name, but this is a soul level 60 invasion build. Pretty standard strength build. Unfortunately, because of the way the build is structured here, you can see the encumbrance is over 70%. So I am pretty sure that this is not actually how he or she is using the build. It's more about just showing all the weapons and representing everything that's kind of typically used on this build, and that certainly makes sense. The Estus ring, I don't know if you're actually using that. I don't know that we get a look inside your inventory during the invasion. I'll have to keep an eye out for that and see if there's something that I spot. But just looking at the stats in general, it seems very reasonable to me, though I don't know if some of the folks in the comments may have any insights, some things that are eluding me. It certainly happened in the last video, so if anyone has anything, feel free to share it, please. I just have to wonder, man, like, what are people thinking with all these names that they pick? So we have a standard mid-level Pontiff gank here. Nice situational awareness to get that backstab there. We'll notice here that this Sunbro, this over-leveled Sunbro, is remarkably consistent in their attack patterns. They use a very consistent R1, R1, R2 with exactly the same timing every time they use that. So when you're two-handing Gaels and you see somebody doing that repeatedly, you should be thinking about trading on the R2 and going into your hyper armor and comboing it, and you will trade heavily in your advantage. Now you got to be careful. You don't want to keep doing that because they might R1, R1 parry. But when you see somebody doing this like that repetitively, that's always a good bet. And look at that other red there. Man, that was really great situational awareness to see that you were getting pursued and to make them back off of you so that you could heal. Great, great red. And unfortunately, this Aldrich is being, unfortunately, rather typical and is kind of missing the point of how this invasion works. But when you trade into the R2, if you do that once, on the second time, if they R1, R1, I would look for them to parry and maybe get a backstab out of it. So they're going to be looking for you to attack them after the second R1. So when they R1, R1, you can just run to their back, and if they parry, you'll get a backstab out of it, because players like that tend to be very much creatures of habit. The red, unfortunately, went for the hail parry. It wasn't there. That was your best help, and obviously now you're looking at a 3v1, although fortunately the Watchdog, the Aldrich, will be able to hit them, and we'll see that come into play here a bit in a moment. So because this is soul level 60, you can afford to kind of play around on the stairs here in the middle of a 3v1. If this were meta, I would not dream of trying that. But even here, I would probably retreat as you are now. That would have been my immediate instinct. And I notice here the Sunbro seems to be smart enough, and the host, to not come up here, because obviously there's they're gonna worry about getting hit by both you and by the Aldrich. And in such a narrow, confined area, that's a really bad option for them. And I'm just kind of curious. I don't know if you play keyboard and mouse. I noticed that the camera movement jerks around a little bit more than I'm used to. Nothing wrong with that at all. It's not a criticism. It's just me being curious to know if that's how you're playing. And I like that backstab attempt there. I would have been looking for exactly the same thing. And another tip, if you're going to attack somebody on a ladder when they're getting on or getting off, I always recommend unlocking, because you will always step forward more than you think. And even if you're an experienced invader, it's all too easy to make a mistake. And I like the swap to the cat ring here. I like the approach of dropping off the ladder. I think that's absolutely the right way to do it. When you've got a party waiting for you below and you've got another friendly invader up above you. So that was definitely a good choice. So one thing you might want to consider is you've got a parry shield. You're not using it, which is cool, and that makes sense. But consider putting something in your offhand that's faster, or at least swapping to a straight sword on an occasion. Especially when you're fighting against this guy with Vort's hammer, he's going to outpoise you. So having a slower weapon isn't buying you anything in this sort of situation. You're way better going with something faster. And if you had an offhand fast weapon, you can kind of on the fly adjust what you want to do. One other tip, and this is something that I see coming up quite a bit in your invasion clip here, I think you need to be a lot more wary of what your invader friend is doing here. I think too often you're either trying to team up on somebody he's already trying to attack, and you end up hitting him, or at least forcing him out and having to adjust. Right there, you absolutely clobbered him. Try to figure out a way to separate the Phantom and the host. Whichever one that your friend's going for, your co-invader, make sure you're going for the other one. And that was a really nice backstab there. Nicely done. And that was a good look for it on the host as well. Also notice you've got fire surge on here. Presumably that's for wake ups, like when somebody has their tears popped. I think that's a really great strategy. That's something actually I don't do often enough, and I should probably start trying to do that. Now, one thing you're going to have trouble with is these backstabs when they're like consistently moving away from you. You're probably not going to get the grab. And if that's your goal, if you're trying to chase after somebody like that with the express purpose of getting a backstab, I would switch over to a rapier. A rapier has a special property that no other weapon does, and it has kind of like a late second chance grab. So whereas other weapons would whiff, it will get a grab, and it's just a lot faster to initiate the backstab between when the animation starts and when you're actually able to complete it. Like, see here, you're chasing that sunbro down. I think you would have been better served by focusing on the host and letting the other invader chase him down, especially because he had fire surge out. Now here I do like the switch over to the spear. I think that's a really good idea, especially when you guys are both trying to chase the same person down. That's a really good strategy. Very nicely done. Thanks for sending this in. Thanks to everybody that's been sending in video clips. I really appreciate it. The level of interest has really been kind of overwhelming to me in a really positive way. I'll keep doing these as long as people want to send it in and as long as people enjoy watching them. I made a mistake on my last video in that I didn't include a reference on how to send me content. I'll have a link to the original video in this series in the description below, and that'll have all the details on what you'll need to send to me if you're interested in submitting a clip to me. So thanks again for everyone that sent these in. Take care, everyone.